It's another Jurisprudential Tuesday, a program brought to you by the Faculty of Law, University of Uyo. This program aims to educate, inform, analyze, and address issues from the legal perspective. I am Odinaka Chukwu Ihanacho, your host on this edition. Soldiers from the Presidential Guard of the country, Niger, on July 26th, seized power and detained the President Mohamed Bazoum in his palace. This action triggered international and regional condemnation, with ECOWAS saying that military incursion is on the table. And the resolution of ECOWAS last week still had military incursion on its table. This, in their words, a standby force which will restore constitutionality. The first world countries has taken sides, as France has said it will support ECOWAS in any action they want to take. Russia has warned ECOWAS that they should take off military incursion from the table. Joining us to add more flesh to this discussion is Bassey Bassey, a legal practitioner. Bassey Bassey, it's good to have you on today's edition of Jurisprudential Tuesday.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let's get straight to the point. Can you provide a brief detail of the coup in Niger right now and the implication it will have on the country?
Well, I'm not going to give a detail as to the coup because I wasn't part of it, but I'll give you some facts about the coup that is within public domain. The head of the Presidential Guard ousted the incumbent president as at then, and held him hostage in his palace, and declared himself, so to speak, as at the head of the military government. Reasons have been advanced by him, so to speak, that he's doing that because of the spate and height of corruption in that country. As we speak, the elected president, is still held hostage in his palace, and the head of the military government have come to say that he is making all effort, vigorous at that, to ensure that civilian government returns. As we speak, pressure is being mounted by regional and international bodies that he should immediately hand over power to the elected president. Well, until that is done, we are still waiting for reactions from international bodies. As we speak, ECOWAS too had declared that they are going to take a military action against the military head of state in Niger if he doesn't allow power to go back to the president, whose power was ousted or has been ousted.
Do you think the reasons that the military is given is substantive enough to carry out a coup?
In a democratic regime, there is no reason short of that provided for by the Constitution is sufficient enough to excuse that which is regarded as illegal, unconstitutional. So in as much as it is rather a fact that across the African continent, the different countries making up Africa, that we have a spiritual issue that cuts across all these countries, which is that issue of corruption has become so endemic. But even at that, it doesn't give a justifiable excuse for any body, principality or authority outside that which is recognized by the Constitution to take over power or to hoist an authority or a government that was elected to man the face of the people. So even though he has advanced the excuse of corruption that has given him the power or the basis upon which he's taking over government, it is not justifiable at all.
As at yesterday or a day before yesterday, the General Abdurrahman Tiani appointed a prime minister. Is he trying to decorate it, give it a democratic decoration?
I may not really tell the reasons behind his action, because as at 2 weeks ago he had said that he is going to try as much as possible to allow democratic dispensation return, but appointment of a minister will in no way justify his action. And again, the Constitution of the J has clearly stated modalities within which a particular person can get into power. So even if
Constitution
has been suspended.
Yeah, it also permits semi-presidential system where there is a head of state and also head of government.
Head of state, is it military head of state? Is it head of state who came to power by coup d'etat? So that's what we are talking about. You cannot place something on nothing. Has become an aphorism, has become a cliche that is said over time and from several quarters. A person who is manning the position of authority, who is now taking over power, came into power through an illegal means. Whatsoever that will be placed on that substructure, it becomes faulty. So no matter the person he appoints as the prime minister, no matter steps taken by him, if he wants to join politics, then he should resign and join politics and contest. If he is so loved by the people of Niger, by Nigerians, then he should resign as a military personnel and join politics. But you must understand the fact that in as much as that is my position, it is in nowhere supporting the spate of corruption that has become, as I had said earlier on, endemic as far as the country is concerned. No, I'm not in support of corruption or the several political vices that is going on across the countries within African continent. That's not what I'm saying. That will be a discourse for another day totally. But as we speak now, he came into power through measures, through means, through modality not recognized by the constitution.
But his people are happy. The people of Nigerians, we can see in videos.
There is what we call induced happiness. Induced happiness coming by way of duress. People are happy because they know if you dare make attempt to protest or resist his government, you go in for it. Don't forget that it's not a civilian government. It's purely a military government that rights and privileges have been suspended. So you think the people will now rise against him and say, no, we don't support you? No, the people would naturally support. Have you forgotten in this country during the 1990s when you had the 1993 to 1995 when we had the late head of state Sani Abacha, when he took over government, we had people who heralded him. Did we not have people who herald him? But are you trying to tell me that the heralding or that the jubilation that we had from people translated to giving him support? People came crying afterwards, as we speak, after his demise. The people not come to say that we are happy or they are happy that he's no more. As we speak today, do we not still have condemnation from the same people who praised him while he was alive? And so you don't look at the happiness of the people or the jubilation from the surface.
If we look at Niger, is among the poorest countries in the world. So that's cool. Don't you think that the people would be so happy knowing that if they can, in a way, take out corruption, take out corrupt people from their country, that it will get better?
You don't use corruption to fight corruption. For him to take over power through an illegal means is the height of corruption. So you don't use an illegal means to take certain steps, hoping that you will attain the proper thing or the right thing. No, it doesn't work like that. Like I had said before, if really he has love for his people, okay, let's ask questions. Where was he before this administration or state? He was also part and parcel of the last administration. In fact, for information, it is the former president who handed over to the one estate who recommended him, because I think he was still the head of presidential guard. So now when people keep on saying that he's coming to fight corruption, I now ask the question, where was he before now? He was part of the government, had been part of the government, except that some people will posit the excuse that he was just there and could not have contributed to any of the policies. But we were just waiting for him to come to say, while I was this is my advice to Mr. President, and he did not take. I was also expecting that in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, that he will come out with some plans to say, within 2 months, I'm going to hand over government to civilian administration. And these are the modalities. This is how I'm going to attain that. As we speak, up till now, he has not done that, but he has commenced appointments. So there is no sincerity of purpose in actions taken by him. He has said he's going to hand over, but what's the timeline? What's the time frame? Is it going to be ad infinitum? And that leaves much to be desired.
So how would this affect the relationship Niger has with other countries in the world?
Niger, naturally,
because we see that some countries like Russia is supporting Niger.
Now, apart from, I shall restrain myself from getting into discourse that touches some other Western and European countries. Reason is that we know the sense behind most of the actions taken by them and what they stand, what they say as far as this issue is concerned. Some of them might come to say that they don't support the action of Tijani. That's correct. But if you look beyond the surface and look at the intent and look at some variables behind these messages, these speeches, and the actions taken by some of these European countries and Western countries, you may wish to agree with me that it is a clear indication of self-interest. So I may not want to get into that. Now, beyond that, on the issue of a relationship, it is natural that some countries across the world who don't support the action that is taken by Tijani will naturally sever or sever their relationship from Niger. That is quite obvious. Like ECOWAS, most of the countries, as we speak, are beginning to have strained relationship with Niger. The African Union across the continent too.
Countries like Mali, countries like
have you looked at the history of Mali? Just I think 2000, just about 3 years ago, Mali also had coup. Burkina Faso also had coup.
2020, the year 2020.
That's what I'm saying. 2020. In 2020, Mali had coup, Burkina Faso had coup, so you can only have a bird or a bird of the same feather flogging together, a bird of a feather flogging together. So what would you expect? That naturally would be the position of Mali and Burkina Faso and some other countries who would share the sentiment that is put forth by Tijani. But that's not the issue. The issue is as regards implication, and that's rather obvious. That's obvious. Diplomatic relations would naturally be burnt, except for some countries who perhaps have one or two things to benefit from what has happened, who would rather say that irrespective of what has happened, we still stand with Mali or with Niger.
Since you mentioned ECOWAS, let's now go to what's the legal basis for ECOWAS military incursion, or the legal basis for ECOWAS military incursion in Niger, considering its sovereignty and its territorial integrity?
Well, there are several international legal framework to address that issue. But before addressing that issue, let me lay foundation to say that Niger is a member of United Nations, and most of the countries making up ECOWAS are members of United Nations. And if you look at Article 53, from 52, 53 to 54, it tells you that no member state, that is, no country that is a member of United Nations that can rightly go to invade another sovereign country. Now, if there is any reason to do that, such a country must have the permission of the Security Council of United Nations. And again, it doesn't just stop at that. You must also understand the fact that even at regional basis, like we have ECOWAS now, that if they would want to take a decision to use military force to invade a particular sovereign nation that is a member of United Nations, like Niger, that's a member of United Nations, they cannot do that. Even though they are a sub-regional body, they cannot do that except they have the permission of the Security Council of United Nations. So you now see the way it plays out. Even though ECOWAS, as a sub-regional body, have the right to now use military force to now take over and force Tijani out of power for the incursion and the break in the civilian administration that had existed. The ECOWAS cannot just stand up to do that.
So,
let me exhaust my mind. ECOWAS cannot just do that. They must seek and get the approval of the Security Council of United Nations. Why? As I had said before, because Niger is a member of United Nations. Most of African countries that forms ECOWAS are members of United Nations. So that sub-regional body cannot just move to do that. So that is the legal basis. Ordinarily, they have the powers to, but their powers has a limitation to the extent of the approval of United Nations. But again, that leaves much to be desired as to why do we, because if you look at the condition of the Security Council of United Nations, it is flooded by European countries and Western world. We only have some African countries who are member of the Security Council, but for a certain term. So most times the critical decision taken, which is always by vote, will be taken by by members who are from the Western world, who are from the European countries. So now they will now take a decision for a regional body to now use military force against another country that is within the continent. And that is why some people come up with some sentiment that this Western world of France, United States, Russia, are now using Africa, the continent Africa, as a theater of war. And that is why some people have come to say, no, we don't want that. Instead of going to war, because at the end of it, there is no American that will be killed. There is no Russian that will be killed. There is no Frenchman that will be killed. It is someone from Nigeria. It is someone from Niger. It is someone from Burkina Faso. It is someone from Mali that will be killed. And whether you like it or not, they are our brothers. Just a few days ago, we had some persons who protested in Federal Capital Territory, FCT, Abuja, saying that they have relations in Niger. So if you declare war and now move to the Niger, at the end of it, you end up killing our brothers. Now beyond that, you must understand the fact that by the provision of our constitution, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that the president cannot ask that military action be taken, or that our soldiers should go and be involved in some military action outside Nigeria without the approval of the National Assembly. That's both the House of Representatives and the Senate. But again, let me conclude by saying that instances, or there is an exception to this. The exception is where there is imminent danger to the territorial integrity of the country, that the president can now send the military to go to protect the territorial integrity of the country, but subject to approval of the Senate within 7 days. And the question is the territorial integrity of Nigeria threatened? That's the question.
So, Bassey, from what you said, are you trying to say that ECOWAS is a dog that only barks but cannot bite? I'm
not trying to say. That's not my imputation. My imputation is this unhealthy tie into foreign bodies, so to speak. And now we have some regional bodies too within European countries and the Western world. They are also subject to this United Nations treaty. So it is not something new. Where member states look at the content, the provision of a particular international treaty, and now agree to be bound by it, they cannot derogate on it. And one of such circumstances is what we are currently facing. You cannot derogate, they can't derogate on it. So for me, I was surprised when ECOWAS quickly said that they are going to use military force, they are going to evade, and I did imagine whether they had sought the approval of the Security Council of the United Nations. These are provisions that parties willingly signed to it. So now as to whether ECOWAS is a dog that cannot bite, well, whether they are dog, whether they can bite is a story for a different time for us to take a discourse on it. But again, have you sat back to reason and to ask yourself this question? What is the limitation, or what is the extent to which ECOWAS can operate? Yes, a sovereignty of state stands immutable. But at what point will ECOWAS ever get into member state to ask them, we have heard of this, we have heard of this. The way your country, the way you're running your country may not go too well for the continent as a whole. It's going to have a spiral negative effect. You may wish to recall that instances abound where citizens of several countries, for example, citizens of Nigeria, would now approach the ECOWAS court on some issues touching on infringement of their fundamental rights. But yet, even where ECOWAS had given far-reaching decision, there is no way it can be enforced, and ECOWAS would keep quiet. So now they are taking steps, having declared that this is what they want to do. They are taking steps to now see how they can execute it. Why is it that they have no ability to execute or to enforce their judgment? Well, as I had said, matters of international law and international relations and treaties, or matters touching generally on international relations, is that which one would naturally look at it and perhaps shrug the shoulder touching on its enforceability.
Since you've mentioned international law, it means that international humanitarian law has a place in what ECOWAS is doing. And eventually, if they should go...
What's the international humanitarian law there? The international humanitarian law that would naturally have come to play would have been for them to take a decision to negotiate within a certain period of time. And until where this negotiation fails...
So let me land the question.
Okay.
So I wanted to know if there are specific legal obligations for the protection of civilians and non-combatants.
Even in Russia. Even in Russia, where we still have war now between Russia and Ukraine, we still have civilians who are hit by crossfire between the two bodies. So the law is there. Yes, it is clear that these laws are there to protect civilians and unarmed people, women and children. But who cares on how the enforceability of these laws during periods of war? Sometimes warring parties don't even obey these laws. So what are we talking about? You see, you don't defend yourself when you are dead. And so at the end of it, by the time this person is dead, as a result of crossfire or action and inactions of parties at war, whether another person is prosecuted at international plane for war crimes is a different thing entirely. The person is gone and is gone. You have just one life to live, as far as this plane is concerned. So that's what we are talking about. It is not about whether we have these laws. No, we have them. But the issue of the implementation of these laws, adherence to these laws, when a man is angry, he takes any action and awaits the consequence. And I'm sure this is what is happening as we speak. And I'm sure if it comes to the point that Niger is invaded, military action taken, we will have casualty, and the most hit would be civilians.
Bassey Bassey, I know that this matter, it's an inexhaustible matter. So let me just ask you this last question. What legal provisions exist to ensure the smooth transition of this military intervention to a civilian governance? That is, if the objectives of ECOWAS are achieved.
To the much I know about the condition of Niger, there is no provision in the condition that says when a coup takes place, this is how to hand over power. There is no such. So what is expected is for, one, the military head of state to hand over power. Granted, do not consider that he refuses to hand over power, and United Nations, ECOWAS, or whatever international body or sub-regional body now forces him to take over power, or to take power from him. What is going to happen is, I'm sure, an interim government will be set, and that interim government will now set modalities to hand over power to either the person who was ousted from power, that's if he's not killed, if he's not murdered, or an election will be done. God forbid, if he's murdered, an election will be done for some other person to take over. Now, within the international legal instrument and regional legal instrument, there are modalities within which such can be done. But for the condition of Niger, I'm sure there is no provision in that condition that says when there is a military coup, this is how to hand over to civilian government.
Thank you so very much, Barrister Bassey. I hope you've learned. This is the end of today's edition of Jurisprudential Tuesday. I am Odinaka Chukwuzoma Hianacho. Till we come your way next week, don't forget to follow us on all our social media platforms. Bye!